Hello, and welcome to the Argyle Digital Marketing Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before we turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Saroni Kundu, CX leader, small business owner, mental health care. We're super excited to have Saroni and our speaker, Tony, for a fireside chat titled Hyper-Personalization for Digital Marketing and CX. Welcome, Saroni. Over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, everyone. I'm Saroni Kundu. Um, I have experience in customer experience service design. I started with user experience. Before that, I have background in software engineering. Sort of fell into UX and CX and fell in love with it. Recently, I have invested in a small business with mental health care, and not a clinical background at all, but for personal reasons and purpose that I'm fulfilling, I invested in one, and I have am able to very quickly see the vast contrast in small business in the mental health care sector versus where I've been before, which is payment tech. So I'm excited to have Tony as my guest today because I think he's going to bring a lot of insights on CX, whether it's small companies or big companies, corporate companies, and so on. So Tony, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Let's not oversell it though. Let's see how it goes. But I'm Tony Johnson, and I am the Chief Experience Officer over FIRESIDE Global Consulting, and I own my own company, Ignite Your Service Training and Consulting. So it's a big world, right? When we think about all the X's, UX, CX, DX, all those X's out there in the world that drive experience around the globe. And so my background, very much in operations, very much eyeball to eyeball, looking at guests and customers, right face to face, leading employees and teams in hospitality. And then, after doing that for 20 years, I decided it was time to leave and open up my own corner of the store. So I'm really blessed to get to work with so many great organizations out there, from small businesses here in Lakeland, Florida, all the way up to large businesses that are global and across the globe. And so, just really having a great time out there, trying to find the best way to deliver experiences, whether they're in person, whether they're digital, but always personal.
Yeah, excellent. So Tony, like you hit it, I think consumer expectations, you and I included, we're consumers. We expect that. We expect hyper personalization, and if we don't get it, we kind of, we definitely feel like, well, this isn't really that great, of an experience. So consumer expectations have really, shot up off the roof. Now, whichever industry, right, whether it's payments or healthcare or, whichever one it is. So can you tell me a little bit from your experience, examples of successful hyper-personalized CX, and, what makes it effective, right? What are those effective methods of engaging customers from your experience? If you could share some real world examples.
Well, sure. And I know we got a lot of marketing pros out there. We got a lot of CX pros out there, a lot of folks dialing in to see what the big deal is about when it comes to personalization and this idea of hyper personalization. So I think I'd lead in by saying, don't let it scare you. Like, it sounds so scary, hyper personalization, techie, AI, Skynet, end of the world stuff. But, it's still always going to be grassroots about people, regardless of how you collect the data. And so, I think about a couple of things. So I remember when my wife and I, when we got married many years ago, we came down to Disney for our honeymoon. We were lucky enough to live here now in Central Florida, but when we got started coming down here, it was on our honeymoon. And I'll never forget the fact that when we booked our reservation, they asked a really important question. They said, "Are you all celebrating anything?" And we said, "You know what? We're getting married." And when we showed up, they had two little "just married" buttons waiting for us. And we wore those around like the biggest nerds you ever saw all week long. And anyone who's ever seen any one of my keynotes, I lead with that story a lot because it talks about how personalized you can make service with simply asking a single question. There was no high tech anything there. Likely it was somebody put an entry in the computer when they took my reservation, and the next thing you know, somebody did the right thing with it. Ritz Carlton makes a career out of that with regard to keeping a really tight CRM about their highest value customers. And the reason any business would do that, and this is the writer downer, we are in a commodity rich environment right now. If you think about folks competing on price, everyone out there is trying to figure out that when folks are value shopping, the economy's on a little bit of a downturn right now. We've all felt the pinch in our wallets, and everyone's trying to figure out how they're going to save a buck. But the places people won't save a dollar is where they don't feel like the experience is commoditized. You know, the folks that love their Starbucks because of the third place experience, the folks that love to go to Disney because of the experience they get there, they will still have those moments. They will still have those guests who want to come back again and again because it created a point of differentiation. The little theme park down the street that does nothing but have a tilt-a-whirl and some okay snow cones, they're going to get judged on price. The Disney, the Universals, those that have the X factor and aren't becoming commodities, still have some price elasticity, and that's why this personalization piece is so very important because it's going to set you apart.
Yeah, for sure. And so in that same line, there are synergies with marketing campaigns and marketing campaigning, and how do you hyper personalize those? Can you speak a little bit about those synergies?
Well, you think about it, the examples are ones that we hit every day. So for me, I think about Netflix and I think about Amazon. And yes, marketers out there, you're groaning, but I'm going to use this because they're great examples. They might be tried examples, but they're great ones. If you think about the fact that spouses out there in the world are adamant that my wife's this way with me, don't you dare watch that in my Netflix profile because it's going to mess up my feed. If I watch a sci-fi movie in her feed, she'll probably divorce me because that's going to mess up her algorithm, right? All the rom-coms she wants to see, all the J-Lo movies, they're going to be gone, and she's going to see Star Wars and Star Trek and the million things she doesn't want to see anymore. But it is because when we go into those feeds, particularly, they all do them to some extent. But if you think about Disney Plus versus Paramount Plus versus, say, HBO Max, they all do a good job with the algorithm. But boy, Netflix has some kind of secret sauce in there. When you think
Yeah,
about the way that they
yeah,
pick movies and stuff pops up that I never would have thought about in my feed, but I'm like, you know what? I'm probably going to watch that,
yeah,
based on
yeah,
the other things that I've watched. So I think that's a really good example of that. And then I think the adaptive part of Amazon, and I get it that you go on and they say, hey, you've been looking for codes. Here are some codes. That's fine. That's entry level stuff. But what really gets me about them is when they think about the stuff I didn't think about. So, for example, if I was buying a camera one time, and I remember they suggested extra batteries. I wouldn't have thought about buying an extra battery to go with that thing, but you know what? As soon as it popped up, yeah, I do a lot of recording, a lot of virtual content. I need my DSLR to be able to go for a couple of hours. I only get 40 minutes off a battery. Yeah, I bought two of them, and that was only because Amazon suggested it to me. And that I think is hyper personalization at its best. It gives me something I hadn't thought about. It wasn't intrusive, but what a nice piece of marketing that goes beyond because we've all seen it now, right? Where you can put my name in an email from your CRM. Yeah, big deal, right? Everybody does that. You can segment me inside of your CRM system to make sure that you're sending the right emails to the right segmentation a little better. And then as you get to know me and what you've offered me before or what I might have bought before, offering me complimentary things through your CRM, now you're starting to cook with gas. You're starting to get on the Amazon bandwagon. So I don't purport to be a marketing expert, but I do have my junior marketing badge. And that's what I see as really grassroots stuff that can get it done. And that's what I like to share, honestly, because I don't know if you've ever been on these things before. People talk up here, right, in these generalities and stuff. I feel like we can talk about some nuts and bolts stuff that you can get done right now today to start making impact.
Yeah, I agree. And just speaking of when you gave that Netflix example, you know, they always show you like, here are the top 10 movies of USA today. Like, these are what people are watching, and really, it's not really top 10 in the nation. It's like top 10 that would interest you in the nation.
Right.
And it's very hyper personalized. It, like you said, makes me feel like, wow, this is my Netflix.
No,
Um,
I agree. And marketers can take advantage of that because, if you have a top 10 picks for you, that feels really good. And if, particularly if it's a movie that they want to get traffic toward and it happens to relate to you, that's a match made in heaven. I was watching something by Daniel Pink on Masterclass. I'm a huge fan. Again, Masterclass actually does a really nice job of recommending things via email and in my app that might
oh,
interest me based on stuff that I've already watched. So
mhm.
because I watched George Stephanopoulos's, and by the way, amazing masterclass, it starts to suggest other things like it, whether it's Howard Schultz or Bob Iger or whoever's masterclass might feel like that. But I was listening to Daniel Pink, and he was talking about trying to get hotel guests to reuse their towels. And if you just say, hey, if you reuse your towels, it's good. Some people will reuse their towels, right? Most people still throw them
Mhm.
on the floor. But if you start to say, hey, if you reuse a towel, it saves a gallon of water. Oh, okay. Now even more people do it. But
Yeah.
he said, if you really get after it and say 45% of the people who stayed in this room reused their towel over the last 90 days. Now you've got some social proof and some personalization. And now you kind of want to keep up with the Joneses a little bit, as they say. So he said that was then a dramatic uptick. Something like 20 some percent of people started reusing their towels by using that one piece of little marketing signage to get people thinking about that. And again, a nice piece of hyper personalization to activate the behavior you're looking for, which, let's face it, what's marketing about when you really think about it?
That's you brought such a good point, and I have like two questions come to mind. As you're talking about, you have the data, and then you sort of match the, how you market it or how you portray the experience. There's a lot of human psychology that goes into that. And so, how have you seen, CX experts and yourself included, use the psychological, what how would humans behave or react, or things like that, like for example Netflix, or where it says top 10 in the US, and it's like, oh, everybody in US is watching it, but really it's not, but you know what I mean. So how do you navigate that, or how have you seen your teams navigate that?
Well, I think when you think about this personalization piece, right, there's this big digital piece that we're all talking about that's so really important. And I know that digital marketing is a part of it. But if we bring it down to a CX and a hospitality and a service piece, where I've seen this activate most is in really simple moves. So I'm going to move from marketing over to CX for 1 second and talk
Yes.
about
Yes.
hospitality. I've got a lot of clients who work in this hospitality space where they're looking guests and customers eyeball to eyeball, taking care of them. I work with a lot of restaurants and food service and folks like that. And one of the most important things that they teach the very best servers to do is to learn people's names, or a bartender who learns your name, or a bartender who remembers your drink. So if you think about that, there's nothing more personal than your name. And if you remember that my name's Tony and I like bourbon, and I happen to wander into your hotel bar because I'm a regular, or maybe an airline lounge or a hotel lounge, something like that, and you remember the last time I was there, I really enjoyed the Woodford Reserve, and you're like, hey, we got Buffalo Trace today. You want to give that a try? It's something kind of like Woodford. It's something new we haven't carried before, or some local bourbon from right across the street. Would you like to try that? The fact that you remembered those two things about me is about as personal as it could possibly get. And that's a human moment connection. And so when we think about how complex with omni-channel experience and busting silos and AI and communication online, it really at the end of the day is the same thing as the bartender remembering your name and your drink. And those kinds of things, or the coffee shop that remembers that maybe not my name, but that I like a venti tall, dark roast with no room for cream, right? They remember that about me. And I feel like a big shot for 3 minutes because they remember my order. It doesn't get much better than that. And if you want folks to come back, and that's ultimately marketing and CX and hospitality, we want folks to have a great time, whatever that something was, whether they bought a jacket or bought a camera or had a cocktail or had a cheeseburger. We want them to have enjoyed the experience, enjoyed the product or service. We want them to come back again and again, and we want them to tell other people how great it is. It's all we're really looking for if you think
That's
about it.
right.
And it
That's
starts with those personalized moments, regardless of where that personalized moment happens.
Yeah, no, you absolutely. And so that brings me to my next question, which is, you know, can you share specific strategies or tools that organization can utilize to analyze customer data? Like you were saying, if you remember my name, remember what drink I like, those kind of that kind of data. What are some of the tools that we can utilize and analyze the customer data in order to deliver that kind of tailored experience?
Well, it's going to start with the team you've got. And so I always tell folks it's about selecting the right team. It's about building a good team. Bartenders who have that knack to remember names, baristas who have a knack for remembering faces and drinks, call center and contact center associates who have a knack for connecting people over the phone and really having that ability to solve problems in the moment. That's where it all starts, is with the right team. Because regardless of where you meet your guest, your customer, or your consumer, there's a person inspiring that experience and there's a person on the other end of that experience. Those are the two non-negotiables, right? There could be any amount of nonsense in between you two, but at some point that's what's happening. So building a good team and having a great learning and development model where you are training your team members to understand how they make an impact, that their behaviors, because I had a CEO one time I worked with when I was a CXO at a big company. He looked at me and said, you can't solve world hunger, but you can feed the guy next to you. And it's understanding those little behaviors that you can do that have tremendous impact. Like, why is it important that the bartender remember the name? Give them the why, teach them the tricks, teach them how to do it, give them the skills, help them feel confident in their role. And they will want to do those things then. And then, of course, there's enabling pieces, right? A great CRM system, a good customer relationship management software. That's key. Having chat and omni-channel that do a nice job of switching off and keeping people updated. I'm a Hilton guy. And so when I check into a Hilton, I've been Diamond for a lot of years, and I am giving my loyalty to Hilton because they take good care of me. And when I check in, I get my text, hey, how's everything going? Blah, blah, blah. 100% a chatbot who did that. If I text them something else, they may say thank you through the chatbot if it's something really simple and ubiquitous, like, hey, thanks, having a great time. But as soon as I flag something that's a problem or beyond its ability to recognize, you can sense that they've switched to a human, because I'll either get a call or a text wanting to know more about what my problem is, right? Or when can they come fix the leaky faucet that I mentioned in the text message? And so they switch really well, and it's really seamless. And it's nice to know that they're listening. They use the tech to get started, because I'm guessing 80% or 90% of what they get back is nothing, or, hey, yes, thanks, I'm here, that's it. But that 10% where there's an issue right away, there's always somebody who jumps into the fray pretty quickly to help resolve the problem, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point when it comes to tech, right? Digital technologies that tailor your experience, that you know when to switch from bots to human, because it does frustrate customers if you don't have that switch at the right time.
Or you have to repeat yourself, right? And this is another
Yes.
writer
Oh,
downer, I
that's a
think,
big
for
one.
folks.
Yes.
If I have had airlines, they're the biggest killers on
Oh,
this. You
yeah.
start on chat, you're with a bot. I give them as little information as possible because I'm going to have to repeat myself anyway, because they actually are, I think, not very good yet at translating what I told the bot to what the live person sees. And I don't know if it's a training issue and they just don't read it, or if they're simply not getting that data transferred to them. But if I have to give you my account number, my name, and my issue, and then I have to repeat all that nonsense again, that is a terrible experience, right? Just psychologically, folks, from a a service recovery standpoint or just a service standpoint, there's nothing worse that you can do than have a guest or a customer have to repeat themselves. It just drives them up a tree.
Yeah, I hear you. And that really brings me to, challenges and pitfalls, right, in companies that you face today. I'm trying to get into healthcare tech business or industry. And as a business owner myself, part of a franchise company, it's, in the health tech or healthcare tech or the mental health care tech, there's a lot of disconnects, and then in mental health care, you're dealing with customers at a different level. So the compassionate care from the beginning is so important. And if the systems are not connected and integrated behind the scenes, which they're not today, because whether it's the frontline clinic, whether it's the insurance company, in the health insurance company, or the clinician themselves, they're all in different systems. And so those are the challenges and pitfalls in the healthcare industry, mental health care as well. Can you share some pitfalls and challenges, that you've seen in the vast experience that you've had?
Well, I think there's a couple, right? So if you're using technology and you're collecting data privacy and security is a big deal. And there are a lot of companies who have gotten that wrong. And we've seen what happens when they do. And the data shows that trust is hard to get back. If you had a data breach, good luck getting anybody to fill out a customer survey for you again. Good luck getting them to sign up for a loyalty program. Good luck getting them to give you your email for anything, because they just don't trust you. So, and in your background here, when you think about mental health or healthcare in general, you're not just talking about social security number and stuff. You're talking about private medical HIPAA information as well. It could be sensitive or embarrassing or just very private that you don't want anybody to know about. And so that's a huge undertaking. And I've done a lot of work in healthcare, and that's something that group of individuals takes really seriously. At least the folks I've worked with, is protecting that very private and sensitive data. I had a huge surgery almost a year ago now. I had thoracic surgery, and I had my first huge foray as a consumer into the healthcare system. And I was shocked at the number of things I had to fill out, but how secure I felt with my data and the way that I was treated here at Lakeland Regional and some of the folks here in Lakeland, Florida, all the great folks who did such a good job at the Watson Clinic and stuff, and just protected that data. And it's scary to share all that information that you see someone typing into a system, but to know that they're taking good care of it is really important. And I learned the hard way that there's a lot that goes in during that time. So I think that's an important thing for folks to know. The other pitfall that I'll note, and this is just across the board with a lot of things, but particularly with trying to create an omni-channel experience, is you got to take a sledgehammer to your silos. Because if you are siloed with data and IT and HR and CX and marketing and finance, if you're living in silos, I can't think of any good way you would possibly be able to communicate in a constructive omni-channel way with your guests or your consumers. So, busting those down is a key thing that so many organizations still have work to do.
Yeah, no, for sure, busting the silos. And that's not an easy task, right? There's, there are companies that have legacy systems that you have to work through, and then there's small business that is just growing, or they grew really fast, scaled really, and there's a need for scaling really fast. So how do you get that, integration to happen quickly? So can you, so I guess my question to you is, how can you ensure hyper-personalized experiences remain seamless across, so many touch points and various channels, knowing that, behind the scene, there's so much of, data integration, systems integration, data privacy, like you were saying. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure. So this is going to sound really self-serving, everybody, so forgive me for this. But if you have a really good CX professional at the right level of your organization, I'm talking about a CXO that is, a chief experience officer or a chief customer officer, a CCO, that is reporting in to a level of the organization that's appropriate. I'm talking about a president of a line of business. I'm talking about the CEO. I'm talking about really being a C-suite player. You need that person because the one thing that CX professionals are really good at is
Yeah.
building coalitions, building alliances, breaking down barriers, bringing people together. During my time as a CXO, I had to work with chief marketing officers, I had to work with finance directors, I had to work with operations leaders, had to work with executive teams, with marketing, with human resources. And because of that, it's such an amazing way to bring together IT, HR, marketing, finance, communications. Like there's no other discipline, in my opinion. And again, I'm biased because I'm a CX guy.
I am too.
But I feel like that's the best way to do it because there's no other discipline that can bring people together and that has a compelling reason to do so other than the CX leader. Now, anybody can do it. If you don't have a CX leader, whoever you are listening, you go be that person that brings people together because somebody has to get it started. Somebody just has to break down the walls and start talking. It's really just that simple. As people make silo busting really complicated, it's as easy as picking up the phone, honestly. It's as easy as being inclusive and welcoming and being robust with communication rather than keeping data close because you feel like knowledge is power. But that's how it all starts. And it also is a really important way to look at journey mapping. And so I'm going to bring journey mapping in for 1 second. And if you think about plotting customer touch points, a lot of that's going to be digital for your organization. So as you're plotting your in-person and your digital touch points and where do those intersect, it's a great opportunity to ask the questions that matter most in journey mapping, which is what are the really important critical control touch points? What are the potential problems or pitfalls a customer could encounter? What questions might they have? And what are they trying to accomplish at each touch point? That allows you then to say, okay, we got an issue here because we're not buckled up at this touch point. Let's go get after that before it costs us a customer. And that's what journey mapping is all about. So if you have not led a robust journey mapping exercise in your business, it is always a great time to think about starting.
Yeah, and I am really glad you mentioned the role of a CX leader. Like everyone in a company, especially nowadays, are all about client experience, consumer experience. Everyone cares. They do. They want to do the right thing. But where do you invest in bringing in the right professionals, like you said, whose bread and butter is CX. It is journey mapping. It is it is bringing all the people together. It's investing in that and saying, no, we need that expert who will come, and that's their sole responsibility, is making sure that the CX is number one, right? And bringing all those touch points together and the pain points and so on. And I think that's a lot of a lot of companies haven't reached that point of, yes, we have a CMO, we have a CFO, we have a CEO, but you don't have someone who's really focused on experience, and you kind of need that. I think so. I'm biased as well with you.
No, at 100%. And that's the one thing I would caution is people love to throw around the phrase design thinking and journey mapping and touch point mapping. We're throwing those words around because they've hit our cultural lexicon as words that are important, right? They're right out there with bandwidth and leverage and find the delta. They're in that corporate bingo language now. So just because we can say the words doesn't mean we're qualified to do it. And so I think if you understand what journey mapping is, you know that you need someone who's really good at it because it's a skill. Just like guiding a focus group or whatever that something is, doing a journey mapping exercise, that's a skill set. There's certifications in it. I have my certification through the CXPA, by the way, amazing organization, to do that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of art and science to doing good journey mapping. So just making sure that you've got someone who's qualified to do it, who has a passion for it, and is taking that approach of looking at things from the customer perspective, not the business perspective, because this exercise is always all about the customer.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. So, without further ado, there are some questions, and I think AI is a big part of everything that we're doing digitally nowadays. So, the question is, with Microsoft Copilot, the AI is designed not to retain the information, pass the session, unlike OpenAI. So does that make Copilot more likely to be usable or more secure, especially in healthcare, than OpenAI?
Well, that's the $50,000 question. I'm glad we started off light today. Again, I'm going to make the qualification here that I don't purport to be an AI expert nor a digital marketing expert. All that said, however, the most important thing to remember, especially in something like healthcare and education and anything that deals with kids and minors, all that kind of stuff, right? And even OpenAI in general, if you're throwing all this stuff into the mosh pit, right? Because everybody loves Chat GPT. Well, the biggest concern with Chat GPT is there's a lot of people dumping a lot of sensitive company information into Chat GPT to have it write your executive summary. Remember, all that stuff ends up in the universe, right? So that's the biggest question. It's the right question. The answer, I think, is let's see what happens. But I think asking that question to the right folks in terms of the OpenAI team, or I'm sorry, the Copilot team, because that's going to be something where people are starting to build their own Chat GPTs based on a backbone, right? So you can work with Chat GPT and some of the OpenAI stuff, and probably Copilot, I'm guessing, will do the same thing to build your own Chat GPT, so to speak, that is centralized to you, that is only for you and that lives in your ecosphere and doesn't let stuff out into the universe. So it brings all the power of the cloud and all the learning that it's done over the past years, expose your sensitive data that you put in back out through it's got like a backflow valve, right? Like you'd see in your house, for lack of a better term. So I think the fact that you're asking the right question is the most important thing. So I don't have a great answer on whether OpenAI is going to be better than Copilot, better than whatever. But I think the idea is to ask the question and figure out where does that data go if you put it in the system, and how sure are you that that's the case? And always assume, by the way, always assume that anything free is throwing your data anywhere it can. I mean, you just always have to make that assumption, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's really great. There's one more two more questions. What is the best way to personalize in a one-to-many digital environment, especially when the purchaser is often not always the end user / decision maker? This is very interesting. Where I've worked in corporate before, it's very true. Like, who you're marketing to and who's using your application are two completely different people. So, how do you personalize for those sort of situations,
Yeah, I think it comes down to knowing your audience in general, I would think, because again, that's a toughie. Unless unless they've invented a cookie that can track your boss instead of you, even though you're the one on the computer, I think that's a stickier one. But I think if you understand the problem you're solving and you articulate that problem, because it's all in the art of the articulation, then you're probably set up for success. If there's someone on your site, in your app, looking at your product, you have to assume that you're solving a problem. And what problem are you solving, and how are you articulating the benefit? And does that speak to your audience as you know them? And you could be getting that from, interactions verbally. You could be getting that through voice of the customer data. You'd be getting that through analytics you're getting on the journey through your website, customer feedback. There's a million ways to glean that data. But in a one-to-many digital environment, I hate lowest common denominator thinking. So really, you just have to make sure you're answering the question for the problem you're solving.
Yeah. And that's what a big part of design thinking is, are you solving the right problem? So going into the empathy and really figuring out who the personas are and what you're really solving for.
Right.
Another question is, how do you make sure the little extras don't? Well, I think what this question means is, when we're talking about chatbots or on those personalized, hyper-personalized, how do you make sure that all those little extra things seem genuine, and not, fake, I guess. I think that's what the question is trying to ask.
Yeah, I think you just have to walk walk that line and know your audience. Amazon does a nice job of for the most part, kind of suggesting things that when Amazon suggests things, it seems super cool. And I like that idea. However, when I start to see the ads on Facebook and Instagram really target things I've been talking about, that starts to worry me. So I think it is about being helpful without seeming creepy or invasive. And that's a line you have to walk, and inside of genuine hospitality, live and in color, it's making those gestures not seem cookie cutter, right? So Chick-fil-A is a good example. So when you go through the drive-through at Chick-fil-A, if you have a dog in the car, they'll offer you a dog biscuit for your dog. And they're always super nice about it. And they're always really kind and genuine about it. And it seems like surprise and delight, if you will. I will tell you, there is a robust plan that Chick-fil-A has. They sourced that dog biscuit. They ordered that dog biscuit. The dog biscuit sits in the storeroom in the right place. It's an individually wrapped dog biscuit. They make sure that there's a place to stock them by the cash register, and they train their team members and associates how to give out those dog biscuits in a way that seems genuine. It's part of their training program. So that surprise and delight moment that seemed off the cuff was planned with 86 steps to give out a dog biscuit. Yeah. So it's enough intentionality to deliver it with consistency while leaving enough room on the dance floor for your team's personality to shine through. That, I think, is the live version of that.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I love how you just went through like all the things that have to take place in order for that one genuine surprise sort of experience there, which brings me to customer feedback. Like how can in CX, like how do you harness customer feedback to keep refining the personalization and strategies, even strategies around marketing? Can you share some of that?
Sure. So the biggest tip I'm going to give is the one most folks won't expect, and they're going to be like, well, yeah. So I'm going to give you the Captain Obvious tip here. You have to use your feedback. Okay. So, and I bring that up because you'd be shocked at how many companies collect feedback and don't do anything with it. Or if they do something with it, they don't let their customers know that they did something with it. Or if they do something with it, they don't tell people, we did this because of your idea. And so it's so very important to connect the dots. The same is true, by the way, with employee feedback. If an employee feedback says they want something, you need to make sure they know that you delivered on the new clock in the break room or whatever that something is because they asked for it. So they know that you're listening. Because if people know you're listening and taking action on what you deliver or what they ask for, they'll give you more feedback. They'll just keep giving you feedback. If they don't think you're using it, they're not going to take the time. Because the one thing that's happening out there, and every marketer on the call is thinking the same thing, survey fatigue. Nobody wants to do a survey anymore. Yeah. Nobody wants to do it because they're too long. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick tips on this. One, use the feedback, make an action plan, make people responsible, make it time bound, and there has to be accountability. And it can never be everyone's in charge of it, because if everyone's in charge, no one's in charge. Number two, when you do your surveys, keep them short. Nobody wants to do a 40-question survey, right? So think about how short can you make the survey? And the problem is everybody wants to tack a question on, right? Everybody wants to get a question in the mix, especially in big companies. So just try to keep them as short as you can. And the third and final tip I'll give, because you got to get the feedback if you're going to do anything with it, and it is consider the one-question survey. My local Chamber of Commerce, Lakeland Chamber of Commerce, does a great job with their member feedback because every month they just ask one question. And they made a big deal out of telling everybody, we're only going to ask you one question. They used to do long surveys. Nobody did them. They do a one-question survey. They get tons of responses now, and they get robust data because they have the discipline to ask one question every month. And they know it's going to take them longer to get their data, but the data they do get is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All great questions. Thank you all for shooting those over.
There's one more there. Saroni, can we do that last one? Because I think that's a really great question. Q4.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see that. Yeah. Yes, that's a very good question. Those people who hold data close, any tips on how to address that?
This one's one I'm passionate about, because if anyone on the call who has spent any time in a big company knows this is problematic, right? This is big company office space 101 nonsense. So you have to establish a culture where sharing knowledge is power, not keeping knowledge is power. And CEOs and COOs and lines of business presidents, I'm going to talk directly to you right now. Stop hiring people who do that. Make folks accountable for sharing data and prioritize that. And do not prioritize a culture where people want to steal other people's work and it's okay. That cutthroat startup culture, its time is come and gone, right? We need to inspire those communities at work where people want to share. And I know that you're all laughing at me that this is like a kumbaya moment, right? I get it, but it has to be that way. The best organizations are agile and they share data and they talk about it. They don't hold it close anymore. And you just have to inspire that kind of community at work. And that truly starts with how the founders and the CEOs, the COOs, the presidents, if you're in a big business, district managers, who, by the way, are the unsung heroes of retail and restaurants in the world, it's about how everybody behaves, because everyone watches how their boss behaves and they act like that in a lot of ways. And if you are open with data, your team will be open with data. And you have to inspire a community where that's okay.
Yeah,
and I will come down off my soapbox, but that I think is it's a really important thing that we have to get right these days. It really is.
No, absolutely. I think it's a top-down culture, right? Sharing and collaborating, and that's how innovation happens, right? You're really, as a C-suite, as an executive, if you're not doing that, you're kind of signing that, your company won't go too far.
Right.
It'll be the blockbuster of the day, like the company blockbuster.
I miss Blockbuster so much. Why would you have to break? No, I'm kidding. It's so good.
I know.
And one last piece, right? You tie it back to, we were talking about Netflix earlier.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants the cautionary tale, right? Remember
Yeah.
the day when Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for $1 million, but they thought that little thing has no legs for the future. And look at where we are now, right? It is the cautionary tale, I think, that should inspire all of us to always give an idea and even shake, regardless of how crazy we think it is.
That's right. That's right. Again, it's data, right? If you have paid attention to the data, to the consumer data, to all of that, you would have seen that there's something there. So yeah, absolutely. Any closing remarks, final thoughts, Tony? This has been super insightful.
No, I think the only thing I would say is, and again, it comes back to this bias thing, but it's so very important to have the right marketing professionals and the right CX professionals in lockstep in an organization. In a lot of ways, CX is still continuing to mature, and it's a discipline. We all know what a CMO is and a CEO and a COO, but a CXO or a CCO, chief experience officer, chief customer officer, there's still a learning curve on the world understanding what those positions are and what they do and why they matter. So if you haven't invested in having a C-suite professional in charge of your customer experience, do that. Think about that, because it really is an important piece to making sure that everything ticks and ties together and it keeps your customer and your guests and your consumers right at the center of everything you do.
Yeah, 100%. And just really quickly, I know product management or CPOs, chief product officers, sometimes play that role, which is great. But it's just, making sure that there is that emphasis and investment into experience, the skills and the leadership and the processes that come with that, I think, is important.
Agree.
All right. Well, with that, I will pass it on to Nick.
Great. Well, thank you, Saroni and Tony, for an awesome session. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be a thought leadership titled AI-Driven Marketing, From Myth to Reality, featuring Improvato. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.